everything you know about strength is a lie. It's a fundamental, structural lie that the entire modern fitness industry has been selling you, and the proof is sitting in your body right now. Let's take yourself as an example. You train, you show up, you put the work in, and you probably have something to show for it. Size, definition, numbers on a bar that keep climbing. By every measure the modern world uses to judge physical strength, you are doing everything right. And yet, if the conditions changed, that strength would crumble. Because what modern training builds is the appearance of strength, engineered for the mirror, and structurally hollow the moment the world stops cooperating. But there was a time when things were completely different. Skeletal analysis of ancient physically active populations shows they had significantly more robust bones than modern sedentary people. In some cases, Neolithic populations showed arm bone strength 11 to 16% greater than modern elite rowers. And the Pankratists, Greece's most feared combat athletes, trained in ways that would have pushed bone adaptation, tendon development, and structural integrity even further. These men had no barbells, no machines, nothing modern training considers essential. And yet the training methods they left behind in historical records suggest they were building something categorically different from what we see today. Built at a level modern strength training has never reached, and never even tries to reach. That finding should challenge you, because it means the gap is not about effort. The gap is about what the effort is building, and what it is quietly leaving behind every single session. There are 5 habits that produced what those ancient bodies showed. 5 specific practices the Pankratists built their entire preparation around. Modern training will never tell you about any of these habits, because modern training was not built to make you structurally unbreakable. It was built to produce aesthetic volume at the expense of biological integrity. Today, that changes. Here are the 5 forgotten habits that built the kind of strength that doesn't care whether anyone is watching, and exactly what you need to do to start building it. The first habit doesn't start with building bigger muscles. It starts with making the strength you already have actually usable. And the proof comes from a man who weaponized something most people never train at all. His name was Sostratos. Between 364 and 356 BCE, he won 3 consecutive Olympic titles in pankration, Greece's most brutal combat sport. He wasn't the biggest competitor. He had one physical advantage that made him nearly unbeatable: his grip. The moment a bout began, he would seize his opponent's fingers and bend them backwards. He would hold the position, applying constant crushing pressure until the fingers broke or the opponent submitted. This worked because of something most modern training completely ignores: his tendons. When Sostratos gripped his opponent's fingers, the muscles in his forearms generated force. But that force did not go directly from muscle to bone. It traveled through the tendons first, the connective tissue that attaches muscle to bone. If those tendons are thick, dense, and stiff, force transfer is immediate and total. The grip closes like a vice. But if the tendons are soft and underdeveloped, which is what most modern training produces, they stretch and absorb force instead of transferring it. The muscle fires, but only a fraction of that strength reaches the fingers. You can build the biggest forearms in the gym, but if the tendons connecting those muscles to your fingers have not been trained for stiffness, your grip will fail under real load. And here is why most people never develop this. Tendons adapt slowly, much slower than muscle. They have poor blood supply and need longer exposure to load to trigger growth. A standard program focused on muscle hypertrophy will grow the muscle long before the tendon catches up. The result is big muscles, soft connective tissue, and the injuries that happen when muscle generates more force than the tendon can handle. The Pankratists did not make that mistake. They trained tendons directly. Here's how you can do the same. Train grip and fingers for time under tension, not reps. Sostratos built his grip with sustained isometric holds, dead hangs from thick ropes, fingertip push-ups held at the bottom, slow finger extensions with no momentum. Not for reps, but for time, because tendons respond to duration of load, not weight of load. Start with dead hangs from a pull-up bar, thick bar if possible. Hang for 30 seconds. Build to 60, then 90. When you can hang for 2 minutes, you've built real tendon density. Then add fingertip work. Fingertip push-ups against a wall. Hold the bottom position for 5 seconds per rep. Once that feels manageable, move to the floor. The fingers are the weakest link in the upper body kinetic chain. Strengthen them, and everything upstream becomes more stable. This is the work Sostratos did. His connective tissue had been hardened to the point where every ounce of strength went exactly where he intended. But grip was only the beginning. The surface the Pankratists trained on was doing something else entirely to their bodies, something no modern gym floor has ever replicated and never will. The Pankratists trained on the scammer, also known as the pit. It was roughly 50 feet across, dug into the floor of the palestra, filled with deep, loose sand, raked and re-raked before every session. Every sprint began in it. Every throw landed in it. Every wrestling event happened inside it. Here's what happens when you sprint on a flat, firm surface. Your foot hits the ground and receives a predictable return of force. Your nervous system learns to expect it. Over months, it begins switching off the stabilizing muscles in your foot, ankle, knee, and hip, because they are not needed anymore. The surface does the work instead. Sand does not cooperate. Every step sinks. Every push-off shifts. The ground beneath you is never the same twice. Your proprioceptive system, the network of pressure sensors, stretch receptors, and joint position detectors embedded in your connective tissue, has to stay switched on at full capacity, constantly, with no break. This matters for one specific reason. Force travels through the body in a chain, from foot through ankle, through knee, through hip, through core, and out through the hands. Every link has to hold. A broken link anywhere bleeds power, hemorrhages the force before it arrives. Here is how you can implement this today. Train barefoot on unstable surfaces weekly. Find grass, find sand, find any surface that does not give you a free ride. Even 10 minutes of barefoot movement drills per week, such as lunges, squats, lateral shuffles, and single leg work, on an uneven surface will wake the proprioceptive chain back up. This habit is one of many that will turn you into the person you were always supposed to be. You will be built from the inside out, not just for show. I developed a complete system called The Art of Living Like a Man specifically for men who want their energy, strength, and mental clarity back. No hacks, no shortcuts, just the habits that rebuild your entire lifestyle, because that is the only thing that actually works long term. The full protocols with the science behind them are in the link in the description. Now let's move on to the next habit. Sand trained the foundation. But the Pankratists had also discovered something about impact, something that modern sports science is only now catching up to, and it starts with what they kept hanging from the ceiling. Deep inside the palestra was a room called the korikeon. Hanging from the ceiling at chest height were bags called korikos, stuffed with grain meal and fig seeds. A second lower bag hung 2 feet off the floor for kicking practice. But here is the part that matters most. After striking the bag with their fists or legs, Pankratists would plant their feet and let it swing back into the stomach, the chest, or the ribs. It sounds crazy, but it was one of the most sophisticated training protocols in the ancient world, and the physical law that explains it was not formally stated until the 19th century. Wolff's law states that when a bone is subjected to increased mechanical loading, it does not just get heavier, it remodels itself, becoming denser and more robust, structurally reinforced along the lines of stress. Impact loading, the kind generated by repeated collision, repeated contact, a heavy object striking the body with force, is one of the most potent triggers of this remodeling process. Modern training almost never generates it. Here is how to implement it today. Include controlled impact. Loading in your training. Gym machines move in guided arcs. Padded floors absorb every landing. Foam rollers, cushioned benches, rubber mats. The entire design philosophy of the modern gym is built around eliminating impact. The result, over years of training, is bodies that look like armor and function like glass. To avoid this, try heavy medicine ball slams, weighted catches, jump training with load, or partner impact drills where you absorb controlled strikes to the torso while bracing. Start conservatively. Because the body needs time to respond. Increase load and frequency gradually. Let the loading in and stop protecting yourself from the thing that makes you harder. But there was one more variable the Pankratists had mastered. One that modern athletes almost universally neglect until a knee buckles or a shoulder tears at the worst possible moment. And it required nothing more than a polished bronze shield and a room full of people trying to knock them off it. There is a record in the ancient sources of a challenge that Greek wrestlers issued to one another. They would stand on an oiled bronze shield, plant themselves, and invite opponents to push them off. It sounds theatrical, right? But it was actually a precision neurological test. An oiled shield gives you nothing. No surface friction. No flat edge to find. Your feet are moving before the bout even begins. The only thing keeping you upright is the real-time firing of every stabilizing structure in your body. The deep hip rotators, the adductors, the entire musculature of the foot, the postural chain from ankle to skull, working together, simultaneously, at maximum output, in response to a surface that provides no information and no assistance. Modern exercise science calls this maximal motor unit recruitment. It happens when the nervous system faces enough physical uncertainty that it cannot afford to leave any available muscle fiber switched off. In stable, predictable training environments, a flat bench, a fixed barbell path, a cable stack, the nervous system is comfortable because it uses what it needs. But comfort is not adaptation. To implement the fourth habit, include unilateral and unstable loading on a weekly basis. Start with deliberate unilateral training, such as single-leg deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, single-arm pressing, or any loaded movement that removes the bilateral crutch and forces the body to stabilize fully. Add light instability where it makes sense, not so much that technique collapses, just enough that the nervous system cannot fall asleep. A stability disc under one foot during a lunge, a Bosu ball for single leg work, even standing on one leg while brushing your teeth. Recruit stabilizers most people never activate. Which brings us to the last habit, where the entire system comes together, and it involved stone weights, explosive movement, and a principle of progressive overload that a man named Milo of Croton turned into the most famous training story of the ancient world. Milo of Croton carried a newborn calf on his shoulders every single day, and as the calf grew into a bull, so did his strength. It is the first recorded progressive overload program in human history. What the story often forgets to mention is what Milo actually competed in, pankration, and what he trained with alongside that growing animal, halteres. Halteres were stone or lead weights shaped for the grip, ranging from roughly 2 to 9 kilograms. History has misread them as the ancient equivalent of a dumbbell, something you curl in front of a mirror or raise for a bicep peak. But that is not what they were for. Halteres were swung, carried under load for distance, and launched during the long jump. Throwing them backwards at the peak of flight added measurable distance to the leap. They were the engine of explosive, structural loading. This distinction is critical. The type of loading that triggers the strongest osteogenic response, the bone-building adaptation that made Pankratist skeletons structurally superior, is not slow, sustained muscular tension. It is explosive loading. Short duration, high force movements send a shockwave through the entire skeletal system and force the remodeling process into overdrive. A slow barbell curl works the muscle, but the tendon barely engages and the bone receives almost no meaningful stimulus. So here is how to change this. Train with explosive movements under load, not just grinding reps. The modern equivalents are kettlebell swings, loaded carries, jump training with resistance, and any movement that demands explosive hip extension and full body chain activation. The weight does not have to be heavy. It has to move fast, land hard, and repeat. Start with kettlebell swings, 15 to 20 repetitions, explosive hip drive, 2 to 3 sets, twice per week. Add loaded carries, farmer's walks with heavy dumbbells or kettlebells, 30 to 60 seconds per set. Watch what happens. There you have it, 5 habits, 1 philosophy. The difference between looking strong and being strong is not a matter of effort. You are already putting in the effort. It is a matter of what the effort is building. The Pankratists knew that. Science has confirmed it. The question is whether you are ready to train like it matters. These 5 habits are the movement pillar. They only work when the other 4 pillars are in place: nutrition, sleep, recovery, and a mind sharp enough to stay consistent when it is hard. That is what the art of living like a man was built for. The complete operating system for men who want their strength, energy, and clarity back. Link in the description.